Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, it's kind of dark out here. Um, actually looking for my bike. Um, I want y'all to join me in a nice old workout this morning. Let me go get my mountain bike, and we're gonna take a nice old stroll as soon as I find it. Um, and also talk about some stuff that blessed me, and hopefully it'll be a blessing to you as well. Yeah, but where are we going? You see, I don't have any vests or anything that's real bright when you're supposed to ride your bike with something light on so that you can be seen by cars and stuff. So hopefully we don't get hit. Back in the day when I was young, we used to just get on our bike and roll out. you know, but I do have some reflective tires on, so hopefully somebody see us while we on the road. Um, just guess we just take a trip. Just go where we need to be. Um, Today, what I wanted to talk to you about, like I said, is just something that's blessed me in my life, and hopefully it do the same for you. Um, what if I told you that God really never intended for us to make so many emotional decisions? Um, and of course, what I mean by emotional decisions, a lot of the decisions we make based on just how we feel. If we angry, we decided we want to act out, do something crazy. Um, if we, feel good, you might want to go dance in the street. Who knows? But it really wasn't intended for us to make so many emotional decisions, and it was interesting because once he showed me this, he actually took me back to some scriptures, and I'm gonna give you, I give you the scriptures that I actually went through, so you can read them if you like. That's up to you. As he took me back to Genesis chapter 2 verses 19 through 25, and Genesis chapter 3 verses 1 through 13. Um, when he took me through those scriptures and stuff like that, he showed me some stuff. But I'm quite sure a lot of you all might be familiar with the story of Adam and Eve. Like I said, if you're not, check it out. It might be a blessing to you. But let me kind of like skim through, some of this, so I can show you exactly what he blessed me with, and like I say, hopefully help you. Around we're looking at Genesis chapter 2. This is happening around in verse 19. We just go through. Um, this is the time that God pretty much he created all the animals and beasts, and he pretty much wanted to bring them to Adam to see what Adam was going to name the beasts or the animals. And Adam pretty much named all the beasts, and whatever he named them, that pretty much that's what it was. After that, God seen that Adam shouldn't be alone, so he ended up putting him into pretty much a deep sleep, and using his rib to create Eve. Um, and then Adam pretty much around, what was this? This is around verse 23 or so. Adam pretty much said, "This is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman." Um, but what I want you to pay attention to, if you end up going back through it, is verse 25. It says in verse 25, Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. That's important to what God has pretty much showed me, how they pretty much felt no shame at that time early in this in the second chapter. Now, when we go to chapter 3, around verse 1 or so, you'll see where pretty much the serpent deceived Eve and ended up getting them to eat from the tree that in the garden, eat from the tree in the garden that God told them not to. And she ended up giving it to Adam. Both of them pretty much ate from it, and once they did, their eyes were open. In chapter 3, around verse 7, it says, Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they realized they were naked. Of course, we already realized chapter 2, they were naked and nothing. They did nothing. Chapter 3, after eating or being deceived and eating from the tree of knowledge, and so they realized they were naked. But pay attention to what they did. They covered themselves. This is one of the examples I'm talking about of making easy decisions based on emotions. Once they realized they were naked, they covered themselves. Because at first they were naked and they wasn't ashamed. Now for them to cover themselves, for them to cover themselves up, they start to realize, hey, something ain't right. But it goes even further, because when you get down to verse 8, it talks about how the man and his wife heard a sound of the Lord walking in the garden. And God calls out to him, pretty much saying, where are you? When we get down to verse 10, he answers. He said, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked. Not only was he afraid because he was naked, then he hid. Feelings and emotions. Now you're responding and making decisions based on what you feel and your emotions. He hid. He was afraid and he hid. And that's what God was taking me back to when he was showing me that we really wasn't intended to make all these decisions that we make based on what we feel and our emotions. Now I want you to take a minute and think back of all these decisions you probably made in your life based on how you felt or your emotional state at the time. Some of us probably experienced divorce because we just didn't feel good. Probably was a great person you dealt with, but just something about the way you felt. I ain't pointing nothing out, like picking on nobody, but some of us are involved in same-sex relationships because of something that we probably felt or emotional states. I know a lot of us end up quitting some jobs before, probably based on what we felt or our emotional state. And this was something like, you even have a lot of people out here that look down on people based on their skin color because of how they feel. God never intended for us to be making all these decisions based on just how we feel alone. I can't tell you about the number of people that probably decided to harm somebody because of how they felt. A lot of mass shootings, individual crimes or what have you, based on your emotional state and how you felt. You pretty much made your decision based on that alone. So what God has helped me with in my journey, he pretty much was leading me to look at, like, pretty much the five senses. I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with the five senses too. But sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. We use those senses, and we use those senses on a regular basis. And we say it's five, but further studies show that it might be 7 versus 5. But that's another topic. But think about how you use your 5 senses. If you walk in the house, you smell something and it smells good, you don't go over there and just stick it in your mouth. Like, cake smell good, I'm just going to lick on it. Or if it's some type of air freshener, you don't stick it in your mouth. Sometimes children might do it, but you don't do that. You smell it and you think about it, where it's coming from, what it smelled like. Sometimes you might see something and you don't automatically just go grab it. At least some of us don't. when you touch some things, before you touch some things, you think about it before you do it. And it's all those senses that we use them in a processing kind of way. We touch, we process, we smell, we process, we taste, we process. So we need to do the same thing with our feelings and our emotions, like our emotional state. Just because you feel a certain way, you don't make a decision based on it. You process it. Find out why you feel that way. If you out and about and you run across a situation that might create road rage, somebody cuts you off, you don't automatically react because of how it made you feel. You need to take it and process it like you'll process those other five senses. What should I do? Should I go after this person? Is it going to cause harm for other people around me? Am I going to be jeopardizing other drivers? You need to process it. Is it worth it? Maybe that person really just didn't see you. Maybe they did and they just don't care because they might be acting out of emotion or how they feel today. We all have been guilty of making decisions based on how we feel alone. And it's really time for us to start doing things different. So the next time that you're about to react to what you feel or your emotional state, this might be something for you to think about. It really wasn't intended for God. God really ain't intended for us to live like this. He didn't intend for you to take your emotional state or your feelings and just make that decision based on that alone. We need to start factoring in other factors. And maybe that'll help before you make that next decision. And it's been, like I said, a true blessing for me. We might get it right sometime, we might not, but at least this would be one more step towards helping you do the right thing or make the right step. Well, we can probably discuss more some other time, but I just wanted to make sure you got something or some type of idea what's been a blessing to me, and hopefully it'll be a blessing to you and your family or your friends or what have you. But I wish you the best, and I see you around.